Hello and welcome to the Rhythm Changes podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernoff, and this episode is sponsored by 12th Street Sound in New Westminster. My roots there go deep. I record all my personal music projects there since 2019. December is a fun month because it's the 3-year anniversary of me walking in there and recording with Anthony Senarini for the first time. Anthony is giving you, as a listener of this show, 10% off all music production, recording, and mixing at 12th Street Sound. You can get that offer at 12thstreet.ca/RCP. Get started today.
Music is like a perfect blend of physical and mental challenges. You have to physically play this instrument, which is like very challenging to do. There's a tendency to just have a totally obsessive personality.
I'm very excited to bring you today's episode featuring a great local trumpet player and a contemporary of mine. But before we throw to him, I want to thank everybody who has attended my gigs. William Chernoff Trio at the Tangent Cafe, at Frankie's Jazz Club After Dark, and at the Second Floor Gastown this fall and winter. Those have been an absolute blast. I can't wait to perform more locally in 2023. And that's enough about me, so let's get on with it. Today's episode up next. Our guest today released a quartet album on December 2nd, 2022 called Pixies, featuring Noah Franche-Nolan on piano, Eli Davidovici on bass, and Mili Hong on drums. They recorded it here in Vancouver, but he has a Master of Music from U of T Jazz, in addition to graduating from CAP's jazz program, which is where we met 10 years ago. I really enjoyed listening to his album, and I'm stoked that's out in the world, so please welcome to the Rhythm Changes podcast, Ben Frost.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks for being here in New West.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I asked you just beforehand as a small talk question, but how does it feel to have it out? Is it a relief?
It's a big relief for sure. It's just exciting to have made something and get to hold it in my hand.
We did the CD trade too.
That's
I gave
right.
you a copy of Aim to Stay and I picked up a copy of that, so that's fun.
Yeah, very exciting. It's like trading cards.
Yeah, potentially a lot less valuable though. Speaking for myself, of course, not necessarily for you.
No, definitely.
Yeah. So you didn't actually record it that long ago. Like, I mean, I put out an album in October, like just about 30 days before you did.
Mm-hmm.
But I started recording it in September 2020. So mine went way back, but you recorded this year, this spring, right?
Yeah, in April. So basically, Eli sent me a message in the new year saying just like, hey, we're coming, as in, Eli and Mili, because they live in Montreal.
Yeah.
Just like, hey, we're coming. If you want to play, then, let us know. And so then I, of course, took that way too far and booked a day in the studio.
Oh, just based on that. Yeah. That's all you need, right? You got the green light, you're ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. So then there was no real expectations, because it was just one day in the studio. But then it just kind of happened from there. So that's why it was kind of a quick turnover, because it just sort of happened, and then the steps after that kept happening as well.
Yeah, because it was one day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you intend going in, because you have the 3 improv tracks, right? Did you intend to split the album between your compositions, more formal compositions, and like improv 1, improv 2, improv 3? What became those 3 tracks, or was that a result of what happened that day? How did that come to be?
It was a little bit of both. I mean, I think going into it, I didn't fully expect it to be like an album. There wasn't really any expectation at all. Like, it could have been just a demo or...
Oh, okay, so even though you had the enthusiasm of like, yeah, let's do this, let's get it in the studio, it wasn't like, yeah, let's do this, I'm making an album right now.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It happened that way because it just like turned out great within a day, But the improv thing, I just knew that I wanted to record some improvising, because it's been more a part of my playing, especially being in Toronto. So basically just at the end of recording everything, just like after recording all the like formal tunes, just basically, okay, let's do 3 takes, just improvise, see what happens, and then then I can figure out from there if they're included or not, or how so.
Yeah. So you only did that 3 times and you used them all. You used all 3 of those attempts, and you did that at the end of your day in the studio, your 1-day recording session. Okay. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So it wasn't like there was like, you didn't do it 5 or 6 times and then you picked the best 3 or anything.
No,
like that.
we probably could have, but I mean, as you know, recording anything, like once you have a good take, it's kind of like, okay, that was good enough. We better move on.
I love that you say that, because not everybody thinks that way. I do. That's when I'm in the studio. That's how I want to think. Some people are perfectionists, right? I like to work with perfectionists, I always say, because I'm not one.
Yes.
But so this is the attitude that you're expressing as well. It's
it felt like a similar kind of thing. Like, okay, that felt like good, so let's do another one. And then we did 3. And I was like, okay, that was good. So there's no point in doing more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Moon Dream is like one of my favorite tracks that I've heard all year from people in this community.
Nice.
I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
What's the composition's journey there? How did you create that thing? Because I love it.
Moon Dream. That's a good question. I don't know actually really how to answer that. I think there's sort of a repeated like chord pattern,
Yeah.
I think I at some point played those chords like a long time ago, and just scribbled it down in a book somewhere, and then knew that it would be some kind of piece of music at some point, and then once I booked the studio day, I was like, okay, this is something that I could turn into something new to record. What really inspired me to make that original push just to book a studio day and make something happen, I think the inspiration is really a lot out of grief, and dealing with grief, and then not wanting to turn that into something, but leaving with a feeling of like, I need to do something. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a really convoluted answer, but in the last few years, there's a lot of grief going on in my life, and of course, being a musician, always wanting to make an album is a thing. But I think out of dealing with that grief, it left me with like, okay, this has to happen. If that makes sense. And I think Moon Dream is maybe, that one song is the only one I really wrote with grief really in mind.
Huh.
So just in terms of like tone, and specifically the improvising, I gave the rhythm section this kind of repeated figure, and I specifically told them like, don't follow me like you would if you were normally playing with someone, like following the trajectory of their like energy and stuff. Like, I want it to feel like I'm just kind of screaming into space a little bit.
Whoa.
So yeah, grief.
Huh. Well, it definitely comes across because there's a striking mood in it that is not the same as the other moods
for sure
that are on the album. So it really stuck out that way in a way that really drew me in on my first listen. Like that was just the most memorable moment for me, and that off the jump right there. So
I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for opening up a little bit about that part of it, because it's not always, it doesn't always happen. You don't always.
For sure, yeah.
It doesn't always. It's not always easy to get there, right? So
yeah.
And then it's like, not only is it about wanting to share what you're feeling at that time, because you have to, right? Because you have to capture it while it's there if you want to make something from it. But it's also like capturing the people, because right now you're the only member of the quartet who lives here.
Yeah.
even though everybody did in the past years when we've known each other over the past 10 years or so.
Yeah.
We showed up at CAP together.
Yeah.
And Mili and Eli were at CAP.
Yeah.
Noah Franche-Nolan was coming up.
Yeah.
He was in high school at that time, but he was coming up too. And now Noah's in New York. He's come back to town this winter, as people often do, right? But and then Eli and Mili are in Montreal, and I last saw them at the Jazz Fest this summer. So when you got the chance to book the date with them, it's got to be also something like, while these people are all together, I got to do it. I got to take advantage of that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Well, especially Mili and Eli. Noah was still in town at the time, but actually he was my roommate, so I probably just asked him, like, when I saw him in the house or something, like, hey, you have to do this.
Oh, okay. So you have good access. Nice.
Yeah.
What's the timing like with you and Noah in Toronto? Because you've both been there, right? Did you overlap there? Did you play here and then play there too? Did you
We
get to know
never
each other
played
there?
here, no.
Yeah. Okay.
Noah was finishing his undergrad when I did my master's, so he was there the whole time I was there.
Yeah. But both U of T?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not like Humber or something?
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you got the chance to play together while you were a master's student, while he was an undergrad student?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Did his playing like strike you right away when you heard him there?
I would say, yeah. I mean, I knew who Noah was because he's in Vancouver. But definitely, I mean, he's such a talented dude,
Yeah.
And also so willing to be a part of stuff as well. He's just very enthusiastic to do something with you, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely his piano playing is really captivating for sure.
I remember feeling that way the first time I heard him, which I think was at a Pat's Pub jam. I can't remember what year or where he was at, but yeah. I remember being struck by his playing right away. And of course, I always looked up to Eli on bass because he was one of the longest time bass players in the CAP program at the time when I happened to show up. He had already been there for several years, and so he was a great person for me to look up to, who was a few steps ahead of me and still is. So yeah.
I mean, I feel the same way still about Mili and Eli. Like when we were there, like, they were my heroes,
Mm-hmm.
Like school heroes, in general heroes, but
yeah.
So then, just like, if ever they were like, hey, do you want to play a session? It was like, oh my God, yes.
I remember talking about that with Chris on our episode where we talked about the Goldie's Pizza Jam.
Yeah.
I remember jumping in when they were like hosting it. And then I would come in and play with Mili or something, or I would listen to them the rest of the time, and I was so excited about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So to get to like record something with them, like, maybe at this point after being out of school, I still like look up to them so much, but maybe it's slightly more peer like at this point, I guess. But even still, it's like, to have Mili and Eli play on this is dream come true.
Well, it's good to look up to people who are closer to you because it makes more sense. Sometimes it's hard to like look up to somebody who's in a completely different generation, and you'll admire them for sure. And we have our kind of people who are like iconic to us, right? Like your album here, Trumpet, Piano, Bass, Drums. My album here, we did the CD swap, Trumpet, Piano, Bass, Drums. You know, I picked that lineup because of the Brad Turner Quartet.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You've got to have that in your influences too. But it's a different kind of inspiration when you're talking about people you look up to who are like almost your peers versus people like that who are in the generation above us. So it's a different experience. But yeah.
Yeah, the Brad Turner Quartet is an undeniable presence.
Yeah, no kidding. You have your favorite album by them, or memories from them of going to hear them or something? What hit you the most? I mean, you've spent a lot of time around Brad because you graduated from CAP, so there's that. You've heard him play live probably in all kinds of different configurations. Yeah,
I mean, well, just him as an individual is like maybe the most important like mentor in my musical life.
Yeah.
I can't imagine any one person who had more impact on me as a musician. But that band, I think the record with Seamus Blake is probably
the one.
So good. It's so epic.
Yeah.
Everyone's playing is like mind blowing. And just like it's like the perfect representation of like that band and how they all interact with each other. I feel like all the tunes are so cool, and Seamus, like, unbelievable saxophone playing. Yeah, it's just so on it. Yeah.
When did you first hear that? Was it pre-Cap or at Cap?
Well, I took lessons with Brad in high school, and he gave me a lot of his CDs.
Oh yeah. Nice.
So I probably listened to it for the first time before high school. Yeah.
So then you went there kind of because you continued on to Cap because he was there, probably in no small part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
That's what I did.
Yeah,
because I didn't take lessons with him directly, but I heard him at the Cellar a couple times when I was in high school, and I was really inspired by him compositionally. And so I went to Cap because a lot of my friends from New West were already going there, and because I wasn't going to be leaving town anyways. But yeah, certainly because he was there.
Yeah, I wasn't positive I was going to go to Cap, actually. It was either that or I was going to go to UBC.
Yeah.
And I wasn't positive that I wanted to pursue fully being a musician.
This was 10 years ago you were making this consideration, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That was a long time
What do you
ago.
remember about that decision, though?
Yeah, I mean, music has, at that point, had been a very large part of my life, but playing trumpet was like fairly recent, because I only started playing the trumpet. Well, I guess I shouldn't say only. Most people start playing a band instrument when they're in grade 8.
Yeah, like me, yeah, for sure.
And I took a liking to it, but I didn't really take it seriously until like later in high school, like only a couple of years before I graduated.
Mm-hmm. That's probably pretty common too.
Yeah, so like the idea of jumping into a university degree after like a couple of years of taking a liking seriously to this instrument was, even though I guess I was fully ready to like commit myself to doing music, but it felt especially daunting because I was quite new to the instrument, I guess, in a serious way. Yeah, I guess like maybe, like you said, like it's pretty normal, I would say, probably for like people that grew up like us, but
that kind of timeline, yeah.
Yeah, but like in a general, like compared to how long I had been playing piano,
right,
for instance, it's like, oh, well, I played piano since I was 5, and I, wasn't like, I'm not, doing my ARCT or anything. So like, where's the trumpet thing gonna go? And I've only done it a couple of years.
It seemed like a big commitment given how much little time relatively you had spent on the trumpet.
Yeah, especially when UBC is quite a safer option, I guess. It's such a well-known school. There's certainly going to be something that'll come of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I had to do music, so I did.
You just went for it.
Yeah.
And then you showed up on your first day, and I showed up that day as well. And then
That's right.
we were there. Thad showed up too, and I already knew Thad, so I got placed into classes where I played with him. I don't think I played with you right away, but I definitely remember.
I don't think so. We definitely did at some point. I remember playing Boulevard Blues together in a combo class. Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a good dude. Good call.
Yeah.
Somebody picked that one for us. Yeah. And then we've actually this will be fun. I don't know if you'll recall this. I can remember at least one time that we performed together in public.
I remember that. Yeah.
Do you remember where it was?
What's that pub called?
Yeah, it's the Princeton pub.
Princeton pub.
That's the only time we've ever played together, I think, in public.
I seem to remember that went well, though.
I don't remember what year it was.
Oh, you know what? That's not true. I also played in the Celtic.
Oh yeah, we brought you for North Shore Celtic Ensemble.
Yeah.
That was awesome because we brought Johnny to play trombone.
Yeah, that's right.
And Gavin Grochowski to play sax.
Yes.
And you. So that must have been like 2016. Yeah, that was a good one. But I don't know. We played at the Princeton together once. around the time that I recorded this album, Aim to Stay. So it must
Yeah.
have been like 2015 or something like that.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
That's I think that's our only gig together. Maybe a recital here or there or something at Cap, but
public though. Yeah.
That's like, that would have been like in the middle of the Cap leg of your education journey, right?
I think that was after you maybe left Cap, right? Or stepped away.
I left after the first year, like 2013, 14. I left.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
because I remember you were playing electric on the Princeton pub thing.
Yeah. I still, nowadays, I play almost all electric. I played electric in my band as well, pretty much. Still play upright, but just so happens that it ends up being mostly electric these days.
Yeah.
That was already the case back then. Yeah. I don't remember. I guess we played a lot of my music that made it onto that album, but what was, by that time, was it feeling different for you? Like, were you getting into the groove when you were in that stage of it, or did it feel like overwhelming because it was just like tons of information, you had to practice all the time? Was that like a hard point for you, like thinking about coming through just the Cap leg before the U of T leg, the middle to the end of your time there? What kind of time was that for you?
That's a good question. Music school is hard, you know.
I know it was too hard for me in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Cap. I mean, I think until the trumpet. Okay, music school is hard, but the trumpet is really hard. You know? And I think all throughout Cap, I like really continued to struggle playing the trumpet. And like trying to achieve a standard that I wanted to achieve. So that was the first thing I thought of, like, especially through Cap, just like constant dissatisfaction with my progress playing the trumpet.
Ooh.
You know, maybe that's just because I take music really seriously. And I, you know, I would expect nothing less than greatness. But
so you set a high standard for yourself from the beginning.
I mean, even doing a master's degree, like certainly at that point I felt more comfortable on the trumpet, but I feel like it's only like recently that I felt like I can actually do what I want to do on the instrument. Yeah, but I mean, that time, especially the last few years at Cap, were really awesome. Being in the A band especially was a great experience.
And you've got a lot of good friends by that point too that you would have had for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, playing with Steven and Parker and Miles.
I used to go hear you guys. Well, I heard a version of this, almost that band, really recently too, because you played at the Tangent, right? Steven, it's very close to that. But I used to go hear you guys for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely, like, having friends like that are willing to play my music was a really big thing in getting to open up a really important creative outlet of writing music. You know.
Yeah.
Writing music in the way that I wanted to, I guess, and people wanted to play it.
Yeah.
And got to explore that. Yeah, so that was, if I didn't get the chance to do that, then I probably wouldn't, have handed you a CD right now.
Yeah. Are any of these tunes super old? Like, do any of them date back from that time?
Yeah. Max and Moritz, I think I probably wrote around then.
Really? Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah.
That's an old one.
So you wrote that tune when you were playing with Parker Wood, Stephen Edwards, and Miles Wong?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Okay. So I would have heard that back in the day.
At some point, yeah.
Now, what is it named after?
Max and Moritz? Yeah. Oh, that's a great story. So Max and Moritz is a German children's story. It's actually several stories, and what it boils down to is Max and Moritz get into a bunch of trouble around the city, like, as kids do, I guess. Mischievous, adventurous kids do.
Yeah.
And basically the moral of this story is don't do that stuff, because how the story ends is that they get ground up in a meat grinder by the butcher in town.
Oh dear.
It's super dark. And my grandma would tell us that story sometimes.
Do you have German heritage then?
Sort of.
Yeah.
Not like culturally, I guess, kind of. On my mom's side is Mennonite.
Okay, yeah.
Which is like sort of German. People spoke German and stuff. But that part of my family actually came from not Germany, from Russia.
Okay, yeah.
It's what was technically within Russia's
like the Soviet
borders.
Union.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I have Russian background too as well, but it's before Soviet Union. It's like around 1900, like coming to Canada.
Yeah.
But they're from what is the country of Georgia.
Oh,
right now.
shoot.
They're from around that area. At least some of them.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to actually say Russia, especially with
what's going on,
recent political things, because we don't actually know specifically where the town is that they came from.
Yeah,
it could have been like what's Ukraine now, or or it could be what's within Russia now. But
there's a lot of ambiguity there. It's a mess.
Yeah,
it's a big mess. Like not a little bit further to the west, but Vez's grandparents were orphaned too, so there's a lot that they don't know about that. It's about my in-laws' side of the family history too. But yeah, and then mine came over. I actually want to. I know that when you were in Toronto, you must have played with like, I'll give a shout out to them here too. Like, did you play with like Harrison Argatoff or Alex Argatoff?
Oh, yeah.
Those guys must be related to me, because they must be from like the same kind of Russian immigrant cultural group called the Doukhobor Russians, who came to Saskatchewan and then went on to BC. So they must be related to me at some point too, because we both have similar last name. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing where that's
same
from.
lineage.
So I'll have to ask them about that. I thought of that because I have that in my notes, because I asked you which tunes are old, and I wasn't expecting Mats and Moritz, so that's cool. But also the composition Pixies, maybe not from Cap, but I did find a version of it that you threw up on a SoundCloud or something that you made with a larger ensemble while you were in Toronto. Yeah. And Alex Argatoff is playing bass on that.
Yeah, he sure is.
Yeah. So you write that one there in Toronto?
And I would say Alex did a great job of playing that one too. I mean, firstly, the Argatoff family is like, something is in whatever they ate when they grew up, because they're all so exceptional.
The jazz bug.
Yeah, that's they're really exceptional musicians. But yeah, so that recording is from my grad recital
in Toronto. Your master's grad recital.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And it's a funny kind of group, because it includes, so it's piano and bass and drums and me, which is like typical. The instrumentation is Jeff Claridge is playing clarinets, and then there's trombone, and then also bassoon.
Yeah. So there's 7 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was in an ensemble at U of T run. Do you know Andrew Downing? He's a really awesome bass player.
I've never met him. Yeah, I know who that is. Yeah.
Yeah. So Andrew runs a really cool ensemble called the Hybrid Ensemble at U of T, and the aim is to basically have a group where the people in the classical program and the jazz program can play in one thing. And that was a really great experience to be a part of that group, because it's really a lot of importance placed on just like student writing and bringing stuff into workshop. So it was a great way to explore writing and arranging and orchestration. So I just wanted to take my existing sort of lead sheet type tunes and expand them out a little bit. So that's what my grad recital was.
And what year was that? Obviously it was before COVID, right?
2019, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, wait. Is that when I graduated?
Maybe 18 or 19.
19, I think.
Yeah. Because then you came back here, and were you back here ever since COVID? Or did you stay out there?
I stayed there for a bit.
Okay.
because who knows how long that was going to last, right? But then it became clear that it wasn't financially possible for me to just stay in Toronto and do nothing.
Oh, like you were still there into 2020. Okay, yeah.
I had to, so like it was such a bummer. I was like just getting in, just like starting to play with people
Just
around
starting
town.
to gig regular. Oh, yeah.
And like had teaching jobs, and I was like, okay, I can do this.
You can
music
hang in
thing.
Toronto, yeah.
And then that happened. So then I got a part-time job working in student residence at U of T, which was miserable. And then I was like, okay, yeah, I just need to live at home and not pay rent. So I moved back, yeah.
When was that?
In 2020, March, I think.
2021?
Or, yeah, sorry, 2021, yeah.
Yeah, after a year of trying to figure it out, yeah.
Wait, maybe not 20, I don't even know now.
Doesn't have to be the exact year, but that's the general gist of it.
That was basically it. I stayed for a while during COVID, and I was living with John Nicholson.
Yeah. All these Vancouver people who you're with there.
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
It's a great migration.
Yeah.
I was living with John Nicholson, and we played so much Smash Bros while COVID was happening. It was great. But then we had to move.
Yeah. Was there a clear skills favorite between the two of you? Was one of you clearly better, or were you an equal match?
I think John is generally better.
Okay.
I don't know how familiar you are with Smash Bros.
Very.
Okay.
But I really had a hard stop in my gaming life in 2008, 2009 when I entered music, because when I went to high school here, I had gone to elementary school in Richmond, and I had friends who did not live in New West who were my closest friends. And then when I came to high school and I started playing music, I lost touch with those friends pretty much. So and my new friends didn't play games. So like my active participation just had a super hard stop in there, with the exception of one of my friends who I kept in touch with. We made some Smash friends in Kelowna, and we would go up, drive up to Kelowna in the summer when my friend got his driver's license, and we would play Smash up there in Kelowna. But other than that, that was it. It's like a hard stop kind of at the end of the 2000s for me in the gaming. But
so to get into Smash, basically when me and John started playing out of like sheer boredom, I was starting from zero, like button mash level, but I quickly like learned how to actually like use the controls, which was so over my head when I was a kid. Like I didn't understand how people could actually like have any finesse playing this game. But then like I was like, okay, I get it. Like I can have some strategy and tactics here.
Yeah.
John I think always edged me out, but what we reverted to eventually was Ganondorf versus Ganondorf one-on-one matches, which is just so ludicrous. Like how the like spike he has, like the 2-footed like bomb,
like the really strong move that is really slow, and
it's just like almost always just like a one-hit KO type situation. It's so dumb.
Just doing that.
That's what we reverted to.
Yeah.
So stupid.
There must be some kind of like try hard analogy to be made there to like something like playing the trumpet or doing that, where like when you first see it, when the controller lands in your hands, like you have no idea how to, like, you can't think fast enough to do anything interesting. You're just trying to figure out what to do next, right? But then as you get more comfortable with it, then it's like your thinking goes off a layer, and so you can actually think about what to do, and then eventually you feel what to do, kind of thing, and then it goes up again. But it takes time, right? Like even something like that it's the same idea as when we're like learning to play, or when we're struggling to learn to play, as I've done and as you said you've done too, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, when you think about it, Super Smash Bros is really deep.
At least if you look at it in this particular way, you can. Yeah,
that concept though. One of my favorite quotes from like Trumpet pedagogy, like if you've ever been in a music school, you've heard trumpet players playing this one Clark exercise, do 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 do, you know that one. And at the beginning of that book, there's a great quote from Herbert L. Clark himself, and basically it's like, to paraphrase, what what seems impossible right now is attainable just from consistent effort of trying to be a little bit better each day. And eventually you'll be able to do this thing that seems impossible from ground zero, you know?
That strikes me as very athletic, that kind of concept. It strikes me as like something that you would do physically as an athlete that you would strive towards as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Even though like it's hard to make analogies music to sports all the time. People do it all the time. It doesn't always line up, but like just the pursuit of athleticism, it's like that.
I think technically learning an instrument is a lot like athletics, you know?
Yeah.
Like really disciplined, small gains over a long period of time, you know?
Did you do that when you were coming up, or do you have athletic or physical related things that you practice and that you do alongside playing an instrument too? Do you have that world and a similar kind of experience out there in any like
in
discipline
athletics?
Or any kind of sport or activity, physical activity that you do regularly?
I was a pretty physical, sporty kid. I was never like super good at sports, but especially skateboarding. I really liked skateboarding when I was younger. I still skate a little bit these days. I mean, that's super applicable because
You got to practice.
it's so technical and skills based, you know, just like these tiny little details that you have to hone in to do anything.
Yeah.
Even the most basic things, you know. But these days I'm totally into rock climbing.
Yeah. So this is such a fascinating thing for me, because for years I've observed that so many people in our community are so enthusiastic about climbing, and for whatever reason I never managed to sink into it as much. So it's always been kind of a curiosity to me, and maybe you can just speak to it from your own view. But why do you think so many musicians are obsessed with climbing? Or really, I'm just curious about what's your experience with climbing. Why do you love it?
Well, okay. I mean, I can answer why I think, and also my own personal experience.
Okay.
I think, so music is like a perfect blend of physical and mental challenges into one, right? Like you have to physically play this instrument, which is like very challenging to do, and at the same time applying like all of these purely mental challenges to this technical instrument, right? I feel like I'm oversimplifying what all of music is.
Well, it's like there's this phrase mental gymnastics, right? Where you have to like try and figure out an idea that is just impervious to you at first, but then you know maybe you get there eventually. So maybe that kind of speaks to that.
There's like, if you think about just the sort of like cerebral side of music, like theory and like or just
harmony
like or emotion that you're trying to convey, there's like so much depth and breadth to just the mental side of music, right? And then similarly, there's like, or maybe equally so, there's like depth and breadth just to like being able to technically play any instrument, right?
Yeah.
And then to combine those two things to create music is
it's art.
There it is. Yeah. And I think in terms of physical activities, I think rock climbing is a really similar combination of those two things, because it's one, there's the physical aspect to it, where in order to be able to do certain things, you need to be strong enough, in a general sense. But there's also this mental aspect. You need to figure out what it is your body has to do, and then you need to somehow combine those two things. You know what I mean?
So you don't mean like you need to convince yourself that you're capable of it. That's another like mental aspect to athleticism. But I think what you're talking about is like you literally need to have the mental concept of where to go next on the
Exactly,
wall or
yeah, yeah.
face or
Yeah, it's
to
just
figure out
it's just
literally
like
what to do, where to go, where to move.
it's just like
puzzle.
it's like a puzzle, yeah. Like in a
Yeah.
general, in those kind of like macro things, like where your right hand is gonna go. But even beyond that, if you know like what holds to use, you need to figure out what your body has to do to be able to use those holds. But then on the flip side, your body needs to be able to do those things,
Which is like you need to have the technique to be able to execute. People often talk about like to be able to play what you hear in your mind or what you want to play.
exactly,
right?
exactly.
But this is like you see or you imagine where you need to move next, and you need to be capable of doing that.
It feels like almost the same thing. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why we think it's appealing to a lot of jazz musician friends.
The other reason is because if you're a musician, I feel like there's a tendency to just have a totally obsessive personality, like if you have learned an instrument enough to, like, for instance, go to music school.
Not everybody's going to do that.
Yeah, like you at some point had to be obsessed with that thing, right? And I think like there's something about rock climbing that is so obsessive, like it's so addicting. I think it's because like you can work hard to like see gains, and that's what like that's what really works well with an obsessive personality. If you can just work really hard to get better at it, then an obsessive person can be obsessed with it.
So out of the general and on to you. When did you start doing it? How did it come to you?
Yeah, so I mentioned, like, when you asked me about that one song, I mentioned like a lot of grief and like challenge in my life. So yeah, moving back from Toronto, basically to sum up a couple of important life events was I moved back from Toronto and then started spending a lot of time with my grandma, and then my grandma passed away. And basically I think mental health issues that I didn't realize I was dealing with before suddenly were completely overwhelming for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I think I was dealing with stuff that I had enough distraction with an all-encompassing music school that it didn't quite take over, because I was distracted. But then suddenly coming home and there's nothing going on and there's nothing left to do. There's nothing to do in life. Then there's nothing left for me to do but for these issues to like completely consume me,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, my mental health was really bad, frankly, dealing with depression and anxiety. And then what really, really helped me was that my cousin Haley took me to the Hive to go bouldering. And then suddenly I had this, like I said, it's like a totally addicting thing. Like I latched onto it for those reasons. And then suddenly I had something to do, basically. It like offered me some kind of something for my mind to like think about during the day, basically, and for me to like look forward to. And as well, I think it offered something that I was missing, which is just like being active and physical, which I think I personally need. Like I'm pretty like active person.
You said you liked that when you were younger too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was something that I realize now I didn't prioritize at all during school. And I think as a result I needed it, but I was not giving myself that outlet.
It didn't occur to you that you needed it even.
Yeah, exactly. So then suddenly that clicked. Like I have a physical activity that I really like to do, and I can just like, and as well, just something else to think about other than, nothing.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically it for me, it just like helped me deal with depression.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I've had a similar timeline. I had a hard time in that period that you're describing as well because of different things that happened too. And I think, a lot of people have been going through a lot of things, but sorry to hear about the family side of it and how you had to come back and deal with that.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
For me, it was like yoga.
Yoga
was my version of it. That's like when I'm doing it, then it really helps. Like I did it this morning and I've been doing it every morning. And when I'm doing that, then it really, it puts me in a good place during the day kind of thing. Yeah. Similar kind of thing that you can obsess about too. I'm not really on that level yet, but at least I'm doing it often. So
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. I guess to go back to like this idea of grief and this challenging period, and like that being sort of a catalyst for like me needing to do something. During that period, it was like I didn't even want to like touch my trumpet, like it was hard just to like play a few notes. And I think once, I think part of what really led this to be overwhelming for me, to the point where it was difficult to like function in daily life, was just like an accumulation of grief, basically, to go back to that point. So like, for instance, I mentioned my grandma passed away, who's really close to me. So that's like apparent grief. But grief comes in a lot of small ways that you might not like necessarily label as grief, but is certainly so. Like having to leave Toronto, and just kind of leave that behind in an unannounced way is like full of grief, And another thing I thought about is our friend Natasha, who passed away while I was in Toronto, and I don't think I really fully dealt with that because I wasn't here
until because that was beginning of 2019, and then until you got back.
So I think those three specific grief-filled things really piled up. And so that when my mental health, it started improving, and I could like practice again and like play. I think that's why grief really fueled me wanting to make something. Thinking about Natasha, like what would Natasha be doing right now? She would be making an album, she'd be doing her thing. Or like, what would my grandma want me to do? Just like be me and do my thing. Or what would I be doing if I was in Toronto? I would just be being a musician, As well, grief is a kind of a complicated thing because it's obviously involves a lot of loss and sadness. But it can also be like kind of a liberating feeling,
That's a good way to. I like that you said liberating, because maybe if I had to fill in the blank there, I would have thought it was like, it could be a productive feeling, but liberating is an even better word, probably.
Yeah, I mean, like imagine like a bad breakup, for instance.
I don't have to imagine.
Like there's grief and sadness involved in that, no matter like how positive leaving that relationship is. But ultimately, if it's good for you, then it's like a totally liberating thing, right?
Yeah, literally, because then you're on to the next thing.
And even losing my grandma, like it's liberating in a way, like, now this is over,
because that it will happen at a certain
exactly
point. I remember when my mom's parents were passing away, that at some point it's going to happen to everybody, right? So in different levels depending on the circumstance, because I guess to think about Natasha passing away, since I've brought up the example, it's hard for me to think of how that's liberating to deal with that grief, right? Yeah.
But it is kind of a complicated feeling, you know.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about that too, making this music.
Because those are the kinds of things that end up in the music, because that's when you don't have another outlet for those kinds of things.
Yeah,
And if you
exactly.
do this kind of thing, then you put it in there, because that's where it goes.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. So when you get up on stage at the Tangent, however small a little rectangular stage it is in that cozy little room,
Yeah.
and you play around the releases, that was pre the album technically coming out, but this is, you know, just a month and a half ago as of when we're recording this, which is like just a month in advance of when you put the album out.
Yeah.
Are you feeling all of this while you're up there playing it, or are you immersed in the moment? How was that for you?
This is playing with Steven, right? And Chris and
Yeah.
I mean, for that, I was just excited to play with Steven again because he's just kind of disappeared.
And now he's back.
And now he's
great.
back, which is awesome.
Yeah, because it wasn't obviously it's not your band, because like we were saying, they're not here, those people. So it wasn't like you were playing this album front to back or anything. You were playing around it.
Also, it was Steven's gig.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it was technically his band. It just so happened to basically be your band from back in the day.
From then,
yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't really thinking
you weren't thinking about it. Yeah.
I just like was trying to be able to play the trumpet the whole night and not not cack.
Yeah. And then you also played at the Lido with Carl de Jong's band, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was that? I wasn't there. What did it sound like? How was it?
It was cool. It was some of Carl's music, and some like more modern kind of stuff, like, you know, odd time signatures and whatnot. It was sweet. I mean, Carl's music is cool. It's like pretty simple and readable, which I think is really makes it easy to imprint your own voice on it, which I think is really important. And it was a fun band to play with, and the Lido is awesome. It's cool to hang out there. I'd never played at the Lido, actually.
Yeah. Only started up this year as a venue in our community. Yeah.
Well, I think, but it used to be a thing before. It was booked by Cole Schmidt.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that.
But only recently re-enlivened. But it's an awesome place to play. It's sweet. It's nice to be asked by like I don't Carl's at Cap, right?
Yeah, I think he's in third year.
Okay, yeah. I didn't talk to him about this.
Yeah.
Because
he probably listens, so we'll see if he gets back at us after this.
Sweet, yeah. I should totally drag him through the mud.
Yeah, put that in at like an hour in and see if he notices
it. Well, I hadn't met Carl before he asked me to play. And we never played together until we rehearsed for this gig. But, you know, I find it, for me, it's really special when the like current Cap people ask me to play music with them. Like, it makes me feel like, you know, it's very special to play with your peers, you know, who know what you do and that you play music. But when someone who's not a part of that circle asks you to play, then it's like, it kind of reaffirms that you're doing something. Like you're in some way relevant. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's a thing of this small size is based on social ties, so much of it, right? So like it's a social currency kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's always feels special when anyone asks you to play music, but especially when someone that you don't know that is like a younger Cap generation, then I don't know, it feels special.
Yeah. It's great to hear that, right? And if you're one of those people, if you're one of those younger people, it's good to hear from you that you feel special when you get asked. Because think about it. Put yourself back 10 years ago when we were there.
Absolutely.
If we were getting asked, you know, if we were on the other side of that exchange, do we really think that the other person would feel special? If you went up, it doesn't matter who the name exactly, right? But if you went up and asked somebody I know they didn't stay local either, but somebody in that kind of elder millennial generation of like Morgan Childs or Amanda Tosoff or even like Gillian Lebeck or something like that, if you ask those people, do you think that they were going to respond to your request by being, Oh, wow. Thank you. I feel so honored and special that you, 18-year-old Ben, asked me to. Would we really be thinking at that age that that's how they would react?
No, not at
So
all.
it's good if they're listening right now, which they are, to hear that you felt that way.
Yeah, totally. I think you should just ask. Whoever you want, no matter what, because the worst that's gonna happen is they'll just say no.
Then they won't say no because they don't like you. They'll just say no because they don't have time.
Exactly. Yeah. Like like when I was at Cap, I asked Brad and Andre to play, and they did it.
Yeah.
Was it? Even now, it feels like brazen of me to have asked them to play my music, but they did it, and it was a great learning experience. To hear what someone like that would do to how they would play what I'm writing.
Yeah. So this you've been alluding to, that you've talked about, oh, I scribbled something out. You talked about music that's readable and that you can imprint yourself on. You talked about what you're providing them in terms of charts. And I think that's great because I've always recognized that you are one of the great copyists of our generation.
Oh, thanks.
You make the most beautiful charts of anybody I know. And you always did.
Yeah.
In terms of the pen, the writing style, and the handwritten charts that you make are so they feel like they are from Neil Hefti, Count Basie Big Band or whatever.
I don't know about that.
But they're lead sheets, right? Like they're not.
Yeah,
you're not doing a lot of big band stuff, but like you have always been a very talented copyist. What's the story? Like how did you develop that? Did it just happen? Did you wake up one day and realize that you're just really good at writing charts that are beautiful, or what's going on there?
I mean, I think again, to mention the influence of Brad, I think one of his sort of composing ethos is distilling something down to its essence, to like a one pager type thing. And I feel like he probably put that in my head like while I was in high school, so
right.
And I think that really resonated with me even as a naive high schooler. So that's always been my goal, is like something that you can fit on one or two pages and like gets the essence of what you're trying to get across in as small a space as possible. So as a result, all of the music I've ever written, it's easier to write by hand. Like it's faster for me to write. It's faster for me to write out one page of music by hand than it is to like open up Sibelius and you hear like da, 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 the sound, and then you have to wait for the sound to turn off, and then so it's just as easy to do that. And then as well, like I don't know, I've always liked drawing. I've never been a good like visual artist, but it's really therapeutic writing stuff out by hand and taking the care to do it, and as well, just like I mentioned about Carl's music being able to imprint yourself in something. Like I think playing this music, how it's interpreted is maybe more important than the material that is there. As much as I'm really important and a great composer and so awesome, I think how people play it is more important than like what I actually get on there.
Huh.
And so that being said, it's your job then to write something that someone can actually do something with, How can you get your own voice across as a composer while also leaving space for someone else to have their own voice, and that's a really fine balance. And I think part of that for me, which I realized quickly, is just if you write your own parts out by hand, then it makes it special for someone reading it and they want to actually invest themselves into it, If you take the time to write out a really nice handwritten chart and you have nice handwriting, and someone like you says like, hey, this is like really nice, I appreciate that, that's sweet. It's just as simple as that.
Wow. When you put it that way, it's totally true. Yeah. I love it.
Not that it has to be handwritten to like be special, but just like take the time to make it like legible.
I mean, at this point, all you got to do to be above the bar is just print it on some special paper or something.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Then you're already above 99% of people's charts, right?
Yeah, or like Carl, like this gig with Carl, like he made sure like the small things, like okay, that he has B flat charts to read, and he's not going to transpose anything.
Yeah, people don't do that. They show up when there's trumpet players playing and they have not charts in B flat. So that happens.
He he took the time to like double check with stuff that like doesn't really matter, and like enharmonics. Like, do you care about enharmonics? And I'm like, no, it doesn't matter. But I appreciate
read an A sharp or something.
I appreciate that he took the time to think about that. Like
yeah. So is that a secret that people find when they get really into it, and that's an identifier of who's really into it? Or is that something that we are all taught, or at least those of you who continued in the CAP program are taught, and then only the best people remember? Like, is it a hidden thing, or is it a taught thing that people just neglect?
I don't know. I feel like I seem to remember people telling me that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you've pursued graduate studies in this music. Like you must have at least some desire to be an educator as you continue in your career, right?
Yeah.
At least there's various ways to do that, right? Like how do you think about that? Did you approach it really in terms of developing as a performer with a performance focus, or with the intention of like someday like being a faculty person and an instructor that way? Or like how did you approach that? Like maybe when you were deciding to go to Toronto, I know the post Toronto period is quite a unique animal, right? But at least when you got there, the intent, right? Like how much intent was there for you as an educator versus as a performer?
I think definitely the idea of pursuing a master's degree was to some extent because you need that to teach at a post-secondary school, like minimum. Which even now, like the general trend seems to be like you kind of need a doctorate to be in good stead. Okay. But the bare minimum is that you need a master's, when we were at CAP, like it was basically like if you don't have a master's, then your resume is like not even in the stack of resumes. Basically.
And that was back in 2012. So now it's going to be more competitive, or whatever you would describe it as. Yeah. So I mean, it seemed like even though I didn't know for sure, it just seemed like a wise investment. Like, okay, at least I can just get this bare minimum thing, and then who knows. And it sounds like you had a great time there.
Yeah. Other goals that I had there were just it's a reason to be in another city.
Yeah. First time you lived in a new city?
Yep.
Yeah.
And all of the things that come with that, like a different circle of musicians to meet and connect with, and different opinions on music, and different mentors and different peers. So I think that was really the main thing, was just being in another city. You get all this new circle of all this new network to gain things from, and then as well just the going through school, there's all sorts of things to learn from that, like. So I would say the teaching thing is like certainly that was a big reason. Just like I'm just gonna do it and get it over with right after I graduate, and I'll be glad I did it right away. But my main focus there was just trying to progress, like as a performer and writer, I would say. Yeah.
The mission accomplished, right?
I guess so.
Now, one of the cliche ways that people often go out of a conversation like this, if they're hosting it, is to ask what's next. And it's not really too helpful, because we're not like putting out music trying to sell as many copies as possible. Like we were joking about how like the CD copy of Pixies that you've so generously given me, it doesn't have a barcode even. So it's like, come on, that's DIY to the core, right? Like I love it. That's a badge of honor as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
It's a Bandcamp only release right now, as far as I'm aware. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Is it going to stay that way?
I don't know. I'll put it on Spotify or something.
It's not something that you think too much about, just kind of rolling with it, whatever gets it out there.
Yeah, I'll put it maybe later. I don't know. I mean, the whole production of this has been so step by step. Because like I said, when we recorded, I didn't even know what was going to be of it, you know? And then as well, just being fully funded by myself, I really had no choice but to go step by step.
Yeah, because you first told me after you recorded in like May. I remember hearing from you that you were just kind of feeling it out, what you were going to do next, right?
Yeah, so as a result, and also maybe just because this has been such a learning process for me, I didn't and don't still really have any plan for the post-release sort of stuff that you typically do with an album, you know? Like I didn't have a day, like some kind of show booked or anything, you know, to like some kind of album release show or just like contacting like people to review it or stuff like that, you know?
What are you talking about? You reached out to me.
That's true. I did reach out, but that was easy though, because I know you.
Yeah, because it's local. Yeah.
It's easy to send you an email.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, like not to say that I'm not going to do that, but, and maybe I will have missed the mark to not have those things planned out prior to like making it public, but you know, I'll still try my best to do those things.
So you said it was a big learning process from like, I guess from after you finished recording in April to release. What did you learn? What would you say? Do you remember what stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. I've done
basically.
I guess I've done it 3 times really that I've been involved. Well, I mean, now in my day job there's that, but just in terms of my own stuff, like I did one with my band that I was in from like 2016 to 2020. We did one demo album actually, and then we also put out a full album. And then I've done 2 myself. So I guess I've done it 3 times as like the bus driver of the album project so far. Yeah. This was your first one.
Yeah. And I mean, like even doing it the most bare bones way, basically, where like one day of recording and everything is just there and like minimal editing. It's still like a lot of back and forth. And even after recording, I didn't do any of the work. It's just like basically facilitating, you know, Dave to do work. It's still like a lot. It's still a lot on your mind, you know?
Yeah, because you have to approve it. You have to give the direction, right?
Exactly.
There's no producer, so you got to say when it's done, and you got to say what needs to be done to get it there.
Yeah, and just a lot of emotional investment, you know?
Yeah.
I think part of why I hadn't made something sooner, I guess, is because of being in school and like COVID and stuff. But also, it isn't totally why I hadn't done something sooner. Like, I felt like I wasn't like ready to do it or something, or like I need to like get Canada Council funding to do it or something like that. So it just felt like an impossible task almost, like to make it happen. And then I just kind of realized that like you just have to do it.
Yeah.
Which isn't not to say that anyone can do it, because it takes money, and I'm have enough security with current work that I could like do it. But even then I didn't have like money saved up.
Yeah.
You know, it was still like paycheck to paycheck basically that I was like paying for these different things.
Yeah.
So not to say that you need some kind of financial security, but you just got to make it happen. That's it. Like,
and there's a wide range of budgets that you could do. Like obviously on the high end you can spend as much as you want, but on the low end, you know, there's all kinds of ways that you could do it as well if you really wanted to get it done.
Like if you like, this is like pretty bare bones, you know. Like I said, one day in the studio.
Yeah.
Just got Dave to mix and edit and then get a designer. It's easy. Anyone can do it.
You get the CDs manufactured.
Yeah.
Too. That's another layer. Yeah. But that is the minimal. Those are the minimal production steps. Yeah. Then there's kind of
then you can go expand from there.
There's like the release and the promotional steps kind of thing, and then the bare bones steps to do there is like near zero, right? Like, because you don't technically have to do any of that stuff.
Exactly, so, you can just do it, put it on Bandcamp for free.
If all you want to do is get it out there, then that's all you need, that's all you really need to do.
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
Is that something that still kind of, it doesn't have any appeal? Like say you are going to do album number 2 in a stage of your life that still feels like this, like that your whole life hasn't shifted or anything, like, because then it would be a whole different project, right? But like if you did a second album, maybe even with the same group at some point, you're still in kind of the same stage of your life, would you approach that the same way, or would you take away something out of this? Like, oh, now I'm really going to focus on the release and the promotional side, or now I'm going to think about X and Y. Like, what would you think about going into number 2?
I think if everything was a similar kind of way, I would realize now that you can pre-plan things, even though things have to happen after other things have happened.
Yeah.
Like you, for instance, you don't have to ask the graphic designer to design your CD
After you have the final
after
masters.
you have the final masters. Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to book a CD release show after you've released your CD.
But you can. I mean, in this community, they would love to have you. Like,
for sure.
You can totally have your CD release show in April now. You could book it this week, and you could have it in April, and they would love that. They're not going to say no because the album's already out.
I have talked to Tim actually, so that
nice
should happen.
To be confirmed.
Yeah, to be confirmed, but it should happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like you can, even if it was like I was just like basically like, okay, I got another paycheck, now I can pay for this thing. Like you can still plan a timeline, and like set things up. That would make things go a lot smoother, I think. That's what I would do differently. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
But also now having done this, it'll be so much easier actually to get grant money. Like knowing
you
how
have
this all
like a work
breaks down.
sample or whatever they would call it. In the grant, yeah.
It's just so much easier to like go through all the like tiny logistical things you need to do in grant writing, like breaking down the budget and stuff. Like, oh, now I truly know what it is that I need a budget for,
Mm-hmm. You know it because there are the things that you did, so you're familiar with them because you did them.
Exactly.
But then you also know what you did not get around to doing it when you did this. So if you want to do stuff that you didn't do on album number 1, then you've probably thought about what those things are too, right? So
totally. Yeah.
Is that something that is a big interest to you? Do you want to do that? Do you want to go into album 2 while you're still in the same stage of your life, or you're gonna wait for you're just gonna roll with this and then it could happen in such a spontaneous way like this one did, when the time's right? Do you think about that?
I mean, I would like it to be a little less spontaneous.
Okay.
But now having done this and realizing that it can be spontaneous, maybe you got to be open to that.
Yeah.
I think what I would really love to do is just like get a grant to do something else. That would be awesome.
Same group, different group. Because the grant could bring everybody together, right? Like could pay those kind of travel costs kind of things. So you keep the same group if you wanted.
Yeah, I feel like things are not that I'm like good at writing grants. I've never won a grant before.
Have you tried?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Yeah.
So I guess that's the first step. What I've heard from people who are good at it is that you just got to keep doing it, no matter what. But I feel like it feels like the doors are wide open. Like I feel way more comfortable now actually asking for what it is that I need to do something, because I know what that actually looks like. But what I would really love to do is record something with a larger ensemble, similar to the one you found on SoundCloud.
Yeah, which sounds just like a live, like a phone recording almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. I would really like to do that because then it's more about my writing.
Yeah.
If it's a larger band.
You want that feeling that you described of like you want to unlock the other musicians and not have it be so much about you and the focus on you, but like what you can create for the other people to launch off of.
Exactly. Yeah, I think with a larger, but not with a larger band, you can have more focus on your own writing, and expressing yourself that way. Yeah. So I'd love to do that, but that would definitely not be able to be a spontaneous kind of thing. I couldn't pay like 8 musicians.
You gotta have some rehearsals, right? So you gotta schedule that out.
Yeah, that's the other thing. You gotta rehearse. I can't just like this thing. The other thing is Mili and Eli never played with Noah before.
Right.
like ever.
Because they didn't overlap. Like, yeah, they didn't know each
No.
other in Vancouver, and
And
then
we-
they went to two different places.
We
yeah.
also didn't rehearse all together.
I
before
figured, yeah,
this.
because they're all coming into
So
town at a certain time.
It was, I had full faith because of who they are and their musical
Pedigree, I guess. Yeah.
pedigree, but also like what their tendencies are and their kind of like musical disposition.
You
I
know
knew
them well.
I knew it would work, but I guess didn't know for sure that it would work.
But you felt that you believed.
I
that it would
believed, yeah. I knew
Yeah.
they would. I knew there would be a sound with the three of them. I think I was right.
I think you were right too.
Yeah.
That's really exciting that can happen. You know, that's a special part of it, that you come in with that feeling and then you do it. You know, that's what it's all about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah.
My last thing that I
Okay.
want to ask you about this is, you know, you've really opened up about the post Toronto back to here sort of situation.
Yeah.
Do you want to stay here? Do you want to go back there? Do you want to go somewhere else? Are you ready to think about it? How are you feeling about that?
I didn't like living in Toronto.
Okay.
I'll be totally honest about that. Because as soon as I got here, it was like, oh yeah, this is home.
Nice.
So basically all I could say about that is that I can't see myself living in Toronto.
Okay. Chapter closed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then who knows where else it'll take you right now, but
Yeah,
you're here.
exactly.
You're here now.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I get to attend the Pixies album release show at some point.
Yeah, me too.
If you want to do it.
That's right.
Because those CDs aren't going to move themselves.
That's
You
right.
gotta-
I mean, that's the big thing. Yeah, exactly. How else are people going to find CDs?
Yeah. Well, this has been not only so much fun, but you were also really open about a lot of the things you've been going through, and I think that's super valuable because you get, younger people who are listening to this, who knows what they're going through, or
Sure,
people our age and up. So I really appreciate that, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Will.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rhythm Changes podcast, the year-ending one. We'll be back in 2023, but if you enjoyed this and you want to take in more Rhythm Changes content in the new year, sign up for the free weekly article by becoming a member today at rhythmchanges.ca. You'll get a new artist, event, or recording to enjoy and share every Tuesday morning along with hundreds of other people getting the free weekly article. Sign up now on our homepage at rhythmchanges.ca. Happy New Year!